Welcome to Faith Talk. I'm Reverend J. Stewart Glover, and today we're diving into a topic that may not immediately seem connected to faith, but is deeply intertwined with it. Our episode is entitled Sustainable Fashion and Faith. From the very beginning of Scripture, we are called to care for creation. In the second chapter of Genesis, humanity is given the responsibility of caring for the garden. But what does that look like in today's world? One way can be through the choices we make in our everyday lives, even choices like the clothing that we wear. Today, we'll explore how sustainable fashion can reflect our spiritual values, including stewardship of the environment and the practice of simplicity. We'll also uncover the often overlooked impact of used clothing donations on other countries, where well-intentioned actions can have devastating consequences on local economies and ecosystems. But let's begin by considering the many reasons why we choose the clothing we wear. Clothing has always served multiple purposes, shaped by culture, necessity, belief systems, and influences. Historically, clothing has been used to protect our bodies from harsh elements, whether it's shielding against cold weather, rough environments, or even insects. Then we have clothing is often a reflection of cultural identity and religious principles. Different societies and faith traditions have developed standards for modesty, cultural heritage, and religious rites, and many still use distinct attire to communicate their identity. Clothing has also become a symbol of status and belonging, marking social class, profession, or wealth. Specific fabrics, designs, and even designer labels today communicate something about our place in society. But here's a relative question. What if our clothing choices could also be an expression of something deeper, a reflection of our care for the planet and its people? So let's talk a little bit about textile manufacturing and ethics. When we think about sustainable fashion, we often think about the manufacturing process, choosing brands that prioritize fair labor, cruelty-free materials, and environmentally friendly practices. By doing so, we're embodying the compassion and stewardship we're called to show, not just for the earth, but for all of God's creation. Yes, and in the second chapter of Genesis, we are reminded to work and take care of the land. So making mindful choices in what we wear is a small but significant way to live out this call. From organic fabrics to upcycled materials, every decision we make in fashion can reflect our dedication to preserving and caring for God's creation. But it's not just about how our clothes are made, but also about how we dispose of them. And that brings us now to talk a little bit about the dark side of clothing donations. Many of us donate clothing with good intentions, thinking that we're helping those in need. And in a lot of cases, we actually are. But what happens to these clothes when they reach other countries? Sadly, many of the clothes that we donate contribute to a growing global waste problem. Places like Ghana and Kenya are overwhelmed by secondhand clothing. According to the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, Americans discard around 17 million tons of textile waste every year. Some of it is shipped overseas, but much ends up in landfills, particularly in poorer nations. And this leads to polluted water sources, damaged ecosystems, and harm to local economies. Here's a staggering statistic. In 2018, over 11 million tons of textile waste ended up in U.S. landfills. And of the clothing that is donated, only 10 to 20% is sold locally. The rest is shipped to developing countries where up to 40% of it becomes waste. So instead of helping, we're often contributing to environmental devastation. So what can we do about it? How can we align our fashion choices with our faith and values? Well, here are 3 practical steps to get started. 1, you can purchase quality over quantity. So when it comes to buying clothes, you can invest in well-made pieces that last, reducing the need for constant buying and waste. It's a bit of a minimalistic approach. Then you can support ethical brands. You can look for brands that prioritize fair labor practices, ethical production, and using eco-friendly materials. There are companies that are working to reduce harm to both people and the planet. We should find out who they are and purchase their products. Then there's the concept of repurposing or recycling. Before donating, consider other options. Could your old clothing be repurposed into something new? Look into the textile recycling programs or research where your donations are going and the impact that they will have. So, sustainable fashion isn't just about trends. It's about aligning our outward expressions with our inner values. By making mindful clothing choices, we can reflect the compassion, stewardship, and simplicity that our faith calls us to embody. So as you begin to shop for new clothing, take a moment to reflect. Are your clothing choices aligned with your spiritual values? And how can you make small changes to ensure that your wardrobe honors both the people who made your clothes and the planet that we all share? Thank you for listening in to Faith Talk. Be sure to subscribe and join me next week as we continue exploring the ways faith intersects with daily life. You can find these episodes on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon, as well as YouTube. Please visit the website at www.reverendjstuartglover.com and share this episode with friends and family. God bless you, and I'll see you next time.